The galaxy rejected them. Humanity took them, and the stars had never seemed so distant to Zara. The young Vaer diplomat gazed out from the bridge of the small, battered ship, her sharp eyes tracing the distant lights of the galaxy. Once, the Vaer had ruled the stars. Their empire stretched far and wide, filled with advanced technology and a rich culture that flourished for centuries. But that was before the war, before the rebellion. Now there was nothing. Their homeworld lay in ruins, a desolate husk that had once been a thriving city of metal and stone. The Vaer people were scattered, abandoned by their allies and hunted by those they had once trusted. Their enemies had all but wiped them out, and now the few survivors were exiled to the farthest reaches of space. Zara's hands trembled as she clenched the railing before her. She was one of the last of her kind, an ambassador, a diplomat sent to save what remained of her people. But no one was willing to help. They had tried to reach out to their former allies, the races they had once considered family. The Isar, the Lyxians, the Zor, and many others all had turned away. Not one had offered refuge or support. All had turned their backs on the Vaer, their former comrades now nothing more than a faded memory. The galaxy was vast, and yet it seemed empty to Zara now, every door closing, every voice silencing. It had been nearly a month since they had left their homeworld, fleeing the destruction brought on by the war that had torn apart everything they had known. A war that had started as a disagreement, a dispute over territory and resources, but soon spiraled into something far worse: betrayal, deceit, and violence. Zara had been a young diplomat then, eager to find peace, to stop the fighting before it had gone too far. But in the end, it was the Vaer who had paid the price, and now they were a broken species, scattered across the galaxy with nowhere to go. Zara stood up straighter, pushing away the overwhelming sense of hopelessness that threatened to take over. She had a mission to complete. She had to save her people. There was no time to waste. As the captain of the ship, she had a responsibility. She had promised her people that she would find them a safe place, a new home where they could rebuild. But the universe had shown no mercy. The hum of the ship's engines was a constant reminder of how fragile their journey was. The ship was old, its systems barely functioning. The fuel was running low, and the food supplies were minimal. The crew, a handful of Vaer survivors, was tired, hungry, and afraid. Each day that passed without hope was another day closer to their inevitable end. Zara's mind raced. There had to be someone who would listen. There had to be a race, a planet, a group of people who would help them. But she knew, deep down, that they were running out of time. Their options were dwindling. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. She turned to see one of the crew members, a young Vaer named Lyra, standing at the door to the bridge. Lyra had been with Zara since the beginning, a bright-eyed idealist who had wanted nothing more than to see her people thrive. But now, Lyra's eyes were shadowed with worry. She held out a small data pad in her hands. "Zara," Lyra said, her voice tinged with a mixture of hope and fear. "We've received a signal. It's faint, but it's coming from a human colony at the edge of explored space." Zara's heart skipped a beat. The humans. They were one of the few species the Vaer had never fully trusted. The galaxy had viewed humanity as primitive and unpredictable, a race with potential but no true place in the larger galactic community. But could it be? Could this be the answer they had been searching for? Zara took the data pad from Lyra's hands, her fingers shaking as she reviewed the message. It was a simple transmission, short and to the point. "We offer shelter. We offer sanctuary. Come, you are welcome here." The words seemed too good to be true. A human colony offering refuge to the Vaer, the very race that had been at odds with them in the past. It didn't make sense, and yet the message was clear. "We have to go," Zara said, her voice firm. "Prepare the ship. We're heading to that colony." Lyra's eyes widened with a mixture of disbelief and excitement. "But Zara, the humans, they've never. We don't know anything about them. What if it's a trap?" Zara shook her head, her resolve hardening. "We have no choice. We have nowhere else to turn. This is our only hope." The crew scrambled to prepare the ship, working together with an urgency they hadn't felt in days. It was as though the message had ignited something in them, a spark of hope, a possibility of survival. Zara watched them, her heart swelling with a renewed sense of purpose. They had been on the edge of despair, but now, for the first time in weeks, they had something to fight for. A future. As the ship powered up and the stars stretched out before them, Zara allowed herself a rare moment of optimism. Perhaps, just perhaps, the humans would help them. The galaxy had rejected them, cast them aside, but maybe there was still a place for them in the universe. Maybe humanity could show them a way forward. The journey was long and the path uncertain, but Zara couldn't let fear cloud her judgment. She couldn't afford to doubt now. The fate of her people depended on it. Hours passed, and the ship continued its course toward the human colony. The crew remained on edge, watching the stars, waiting for something, anything to happen. But the silence of space was overwhelming, and soon the hum of the engines became the only sound. As they neared the colony's coordinates, Zara's heart began to race. The data pad had been clear, but she couldn't help the knot of worry in her stomach. What if this was all a mistake? What if they were walking into a trap? But there was no turning back now. "Approaching the colony," the pilot announced over the intercom. Zara stood and made her way to the bridge, where the vast expanse of space stretched out before them. The colony was a small outpost, nothing more than a speck against the backdrop of stars. But it was there, and it was their last hope. As the ship descended toward the colony, Zara felt a surge of anticipation. This was it, the moment that would define the future of the Veer. She had never been one to believe in fate, but at this moment she allowed herself to believe in one thing, the possibility of a second chance. The ship touched down gently on the landing platform, and the crew remained silent, waiting for whatever would come next. Zara's fingers tightened around the armrest of her chair as the doors to the ship slowly opened. And then, the first thing she saw was a human. Standing at the foot of the ramp, a man in a military uniform, his face marked by years of experience and a calm determination. He looked up at her, and for a moment their eyes met. "I'm Captain Aiden Volk," he said, his voice steady and warm. "Welcome to our colony, we're here to help." Zara blinked in disbelief. She had expected suspicion, hostility, anything but this. "Thank you," Zara said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We've lost everything. We don't know where else to go." Captain Volk nodded, his expression softening. "Then you've come to the right place. We'll take care of you. You're safe here." As Zara stepped off the ship and onto the soil of the human colony, something inside her broke free. The weight of 1,000 doubts, 1,000 fears, all dissipating in the warmth of the human's simple kindness. Maybe the galaxy had rejected them. But humanity had taken them in. Zara's heart still raced with the uncertainty that clung to her. The human colony wasn't much, but it was a haven, a place where the Veer had been welcomed when the rest of the galaxy had shut its doors. The thought was both comforting and strange. The colony wasn't what she had expected. It wasn't grand or filled with the advanced technology of the Veer or their former allies. It was simple, but there was a quiet strength in its simplicity. The buildings were modest, built to withstand the harsh conditions of the distant planet they called home. The air was fresh and clean, and Zara felt the weight of her worries ease just slightly. Captain Volk led her through the colony, his steps sure and confident. Despite the warm welcome, Zara couldn't help but notice the skepticism in the eyes of the humans she passed. There was no outright hostility, but there was something else, something guarded. It was clear that the humans weren't used to strangers, especially not the Veer. Her people had once been known as conquerors, their empire vast and powerful, and now here she was, standing in the midst of what was, in many ways, the opposite of everything her people had represented. Volk, however, seemed different. His gaze was steady, and the way he spoke to the people around him suggested a leader who truly cared for his people. They hadn't offered the Veer a place out of duty or fear. They had offered it because, for some reason, they had chosen to. The warmth in his voice and the kindness in his eyes made Zara feel, for the first time in weeks, that she wasn't just a refugee. She was someone who mattered. The colony was a small one, but it was thriving. Zara could tell that the people who lived here were survivors, people who had endured hardships, who had learned the importance of community and compassion. The farms they passed were carefully tended, and the work was hard but done with a sense of purpose. The machines that helped cultivate the land weren't advanced, but they were efficient. The humans made do with what they had. It was a lesson the Veer could stand to learn. As they walked, Zara couldn't help but glance over her shoulder at the small group of Veer survivors who had come with her. They were still in disbelief, unsure of what to make of this new world they had found themselves in. The distrust was still there, lurking just beneath the surface. They had been betrayed by everyone they had ever known, and now they were being asked to trust the very species they had never fully understood. "Captain Volk," Zara said, her voice hesitant, "I must ask, why are you helping us? You know who we are, what we have done. The galaxy is filled with rumors about the Veer. Why take us in? Volk paused, turning to face her. There was a glint of understanding in his eyes. He didn't seem surprised by the question. Perhaps he had been expecting it. We do things differently here, Zara, he said simply. We don't judge people based on their past. We judge them by what they're willing to do for the future. Zara wasn't sure she understood, but she didn't push it further. Instead, she nodded. There was something about the captain that made her feel like she didn't need to ask more questions. It was enough to know that, for now, the humans were willing to offer them a chance. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the colony, Zara sat outside the small dwelling she had been assigned. The air was cooler now, and she could hear the distant hum of activity as the humans continued their work. But for the first time in days, the sound wasn't oppressive. It wasn't the frantic noise of escaping destruction. It was the calm of a place that had learned how to live. Zara wasn't alone. Lyra, the young Veer who had been with her from the beginning, sat beside her. Lyra was still adjusting to their new surroundings, but she had already made some tentative friendships with the humans. She was full of questions, eager to learn about this strange new world they had entered. But even she could not hide the doubt that lingered in her eyes. "Do you think we can trust them?" Lyra asked softly, breaking the silence between them. Zara took a deep breath. The question had been on her mind since they arrived, but she hadn't been able to find an answer. Trust wasn't something she gave easily, not anymore. "I don't know," Zara replied honestly. "But I do know that we have no choice but to try. If we don't, then what's the point of surviving?" Lyra nodded, though her eyes still held a glimmer of fear. She had seen too much destruction, too much betrayal. She wasn't sure if this new path was a lifeline or just another trap. The next few days passed in a blur. The humans showed them around, introduced them to the various aspects of life on the colony. They were taught how to use the human technology that powered the colony, how to work with the land and tend to the crops. It was simple, but it was something. And for the Veer, that was a start. Captain Volk continued to check in on them regularly, and each time he did, Zara found herself drawn to his presence. It wasn't just his kindness that intrigued her. It was his leadership, the way he spoke to people, how he seemed to inspire loyalty from those around him. He wasn't the kind of leader who relied on fear or force. He led by example. His people followed him because they respected him, not because they had to. Zara found herself wondering what it would be like to have a leader like him back on Veer. Her people had once been ruled by powerful generals and cold, calculating leaders who cared more for conquest than for the welfare of their people. They had been taught to see others as tools to be used, resources to be taken. That way of thinking had been their downfall. Here among the humans, it was different. Captain Volk didn't just see people as resources. He saw them as individuals, each one important in their own way. Zara had never experienced that before, and it both unsettled and fascinated her. One evening, as Zara and Volk sat together outside, the sky painted in hues of orange and purple, she found herself speaking more freely than she had in days. "I never thought I would find this," Zara said quietly, watching the stars above. "A place where we might finally be safe, a place where we might have a future." Volk turned to look at her, his gaze thoughtful. "You've been through a lot, Zara, you and your people. I can't imagine what it must have been like for you. But sometimes, it's the hardest journeys that teach us the most about who we really are." Zara studied him for a moment, wondering what he truly meant. She had never thought much about who the Veer were, what they had become. But now, with everything lost, with everything they had been through, she couldn't help but wonder if this was an opportunity to rebuild, not just their civilization, but their identity, to become something better. "Maybe," she said slowly, "maybe we're not just here to survive. Maybe we're here to learn how to live." Volk smiled, a soft, understanding smile that made Zara's heart flutter for reasons she couldn't fully explain. It was a smile that told her she wasn't alone in her struggle, that she had found someone who understood. "We all have something to learn, Zara," he said gently, "and sometimes the hardest lessons are the ones that lead to the greatest change." As the stars twinkled overhead, Zara felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, hope. It was small, fragile, but it was there. And for the first time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, the future wasn't as dark as she had once thought. But the road ahead was still uncertain. The rest of the galaxy would not forgive the Veer so easily. They were still outcasts, still marked by their past. The question was, would the humans stand by them when the rest of the universe came calling? For now, all Zara could do was hold on to the hope that had begun to bloom in her heart. They had found refuge. They had found a chance. And in this quiet colony at the edge of the stars, it was enough. The days blurred together as Zara adjusted to life on the human colony. It wasn't an easy transition. She and the other Veyer had spent their lives in the shadow of an empire, where power and control had been everything. Now, they were learning to live in a place where survival was about community, hard work, and trust. The humans had been patient with them, teaching them the basics of farming, maintaining the colony's systems, and adapting to the new environment. But every day brought new challenges. Zara spent most of her time with Captain Volk. He was always busy, overseeing the colony's operations, managing the humans, and making decisions that would shape their future. But despite his duties, he made time to speak with her, to help her understand what it meant to lead in this new world. His calm, thoughtful manner had made an impression on her, though she had never fully voiced the respect she felt. She had once been a leader, a diplomat for the Veyer, but now she was learning to be something different, something more human. One afternoon, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, Zara found herself working alongside some of the human farmers. The land they cultivated wasn't like the metal and stone surfaces of her people's homeworld. It was dirt, grass, and simple structures, but it had a quiet beauty to it. The crops they grew, grain, vegetables, and a few fruits, were harvested by hand, carefully tended and nurtured. It was a life that seemed small compared to the vastness of the Veyer Empire, but in that moment it felt meaningful. "You're doing well," a woman named Sarah said, handing Zara a basket of vegetables to sort. She was one of the farmers, older than most of the humans Zara had met, with a no-nonsense attitude and a warm smile. Zara smiled faintly, accepting the basket. "It's hard work," she said, her voice thoughtful. "I've never done anything like this before," Sarah chuckled. "Most people haven't, but when you've been through what we have, you learn to make do. It's not easy, but it's honest work, and at the end of the day, you know you've done something important." Zara looked at the basket of vegetables in her hands. It was simple, but it gave her a sense of purpose. For the first time since they had arrived, she didn't feel completely lost. She still missed her home, her people, the way things had been before everything fell apart. But the more she worked alongside the humans, the more she realized that there was a quiet strength in their way of life. They didn't have the advanced technology or the vast resources of the Veyer, but they had something else, a resilience that came from surviving together. As the days passed, Zara noticed that the other Veyer were slowly adjusting to their new lives as well. Some of them were more comfortable than others. Lyra, the young Veyer who had been with Zara from the beginning, seemed to adapt the quickest. She had always been curious about other cultures, and the humans' way of life fascinated her. She spent hours speaking with them, asking questions, learning their language, and soaking in everything she could. But not all the Veyer were so eager to accept the humans. A few of them still carried the weight of their past with them. They were distrustful, reluctant to open up, and uncertain about the humans' true intentions. They had been betrayed by so many races before. Why should they trust these humans now? Zara understood their hesitations. She shared their doubts, though she didn't voice them as openly. But what other choice did they have? The galaxy had turned its back on them. These humans were all that remained. One evening, as the colony settled into the peaceful rhythm of the night, Zara found herself sitting with Captain Volk again, the two of them staring out at the stars. The sky was clear, the stars shining brightly above them. For a moment, Zara felt a sense of peace that had eluded her for so long. "You've been quiet," Volk said, his voice breaking the silence. "Something on your mind?" Zara hesitated before responding. "It's just, everything seems so different here, I'm not sure if we belong." Volk glanced at her, his eyes understanding. "You belong because you're here, and we're doing what we can to make sure you have a place to stay." Zara shook her head. "It's more than that. We were once an empire. My people ruled over hundreds of planets. We were strong. We had everything, and now we're just a handful of survivors, living on a small colony doing the most basic things. I don't know how to live like this." Volk was silent for a moment, and Zara could feel his gaze on her. He seemed to be choosing his words carefully. "I think I understand what you mean," he said at last. "I've been here since the beginning when this colony was just an idea. We didn't have much. We didn't have the resources or the tech that the big empires have, but we had something else: each other. We learned to survive by working together, by relying on one another, and that's what we have here. Zara listened, her mind racing. But you weren't like the Veer, you didn't have power, you didn't conquer worlds. Volk's eyes softened. No, we didn't conquer, but we fought. We fought for the chance to make something better. It's not always about power, Zara. It's about the choices we make, the relationships we build. Sometimes that's enough to survive, and sometimes it's enough to thrive. Zara was quiet for a long time. She hadn't expected Volk to speak so openly, but there was something about his words that struck a chord within her. Perhaps, in the end, the Veer had been so focused on conquest that they had forgotten what truly mattered. They had thought that power would solve everything. But it hadn't. Do you think we could learn how to live like you? Zara asked, her voice uncertain. Volk smiled gently. I think you've already started. The days grew colder as the planet's seasons shifted. Zara and the other Veer continued to work alongside the humans, learning how to tend to the crops, how to repair the colony's equipment, and how to communicate more effectively with their new neighbors. Slowly, trust began to grow between them. The humans saw the Veer not as threats, but as individuals who were trying to rebuild their lives. And the Veer, in turn, began to see the humans not as strangers, but as partners. But not everyone in the galaxy was so forgiving. Zara had heard rumors, whispers of ships from other species passing near the human colony, of the galaxy's leaders questioning the wisdom of allowing the Veer to stay. She knew that the peaceful life they had found here was fragile. The humans were taking a risk by helping them, and if the rest of the galaxy found out, they might not be so kind. One morning, as Zara worked in the fields with Lyra, she saw something in the distance, a group of ships, dark against the sky. The ships weren't human. Zara's heart skipped a beat as she recognized the insignia. They were from the Galactic Council, the very council that had cast the Veer aside. Captain Volk, Zara cried, rushing to the colony center. The council's ships are coming. They'll want us gone. Volk was already there, his expression grim as he looked up at the approaching ships. Stay calm, he said. We'll handle this. Zara felt a knot of fear in her stomach. What if the humans couldn't protect them? What if the rest of the galaxy came to force them out? But Captain Volk wasn't backing down. We've done nothing wrong, he said, and we're not going to let anyone push us around. Zara stood by his side, watching the ships grow closer. She didn't know what was going to happen next. But for the first time since their exile, she felt a flicker of something she hadn't known in a long time: hope. Whatever came next, she knew one thing: the humans had given them a chance. And Zara wasn't about to let that chance slip away. Zara stood beside Captain Volk, watching the approaching fleet of ships. Her heart hammered in her chest as she recognized the insignia of the Galactic Council on their hulls. These were the same leaders who had abandoned the Veer when their empire fell, the same voices that had condemned them to exile, the same faces that had once promised alliance and support until the war turned against them. The Council's ships, sleek and imposing, grew larger as they descended toward the human colony. Zara's stomach churned with fear, but she tried to push it down. She had no idea what was about to happen, but she couldn't afford to show weakness now. The humans had taken them in. They had given the Veer a chance when no one else would. It was time for them to stand together to defend their right to exist. Captain Volk didn't seem afraid, though Zara could see the tension in his posture. He turned to her, his expression firm. Stay calm, he said. We've done nothing wrong. We have every right to be here, and we're not going to back down. Zara nodded, but her mind raced. She knew that the council was unlikely to listen to reason. The Veer were still seen as a threat, a dangerous species that had once ruled the galaxy with an iron fist. The idea of them being accepted back into galactic society was something no one would consider lightly. And now, with the humans caught in the middle, Zara feared they might be dragged into a war that none of them could win. The ships landed with a low hum, sending small tremors through the ground. Zara watched as several figures disembarked, clad in the uniforms of the Galactic Council. They moved with an air of authority, their eyes scanning the colony with barely concealed disdain. Zara recognized a few of them, high-ranking officials who had once been allies of the Veer but who had now turned their backs on them in their time of need. Captain Volk stepped forward, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. Zara followed him, trying to steady her breath. The humans didn't seem intimidated by the council's presence, which only increased Zara's respect for them. These people were brave. They were willing to stand up for what they believed in, even if it meant going against the rest of the galaxy. The council's leader, a tall figure with dark hair and sharp features, strode forward. His eyes locked onto Zara with an unsettling intensity, and for a moment she felt the weight of his judgment. He didn't speak immediately, but his gaze spoke volumes. He was sizing them up, trying to determine if the humans had made a mistake by offering refuge to the Veer. "You are harboring criminals," the council leader finally said, his voice cold and accusing. "The Veer are war criminals. You have no right to shelter them." Volk didn't flinch. He looked the man squarely in the eye and spoke with quiet confidence. "These people are survivors. They've lost everything, home, family, their future, and they've been abandoned by the rest of the galaxy. We're giving them a chance to rebuild." "They're not criminals," the council leader scoffed. "You speak of rebuilding, but their empire was built on conquest and destruction. What makes you think they can change?" "We believe in second chances," Volk said, his voice unwavering. "That's what we've built here. A place where everyone has the opportunity to start anew. The Veer are no different." Zara could see the doubt flicker in the council leader's eyes, but it was quickly replaced by determination. "This is a mistake, Captain. You're making a dangerous choice. The galaxy won't tolerate it." Volk stepped forward, his expression hardening. "I don't care what the galaxy tolerates. I care about what's right, and right now we're offering these people a place to heal, a place to rebuild. If you want to tear that down, you'll have to go through me." For a moment there was silence. The council members exchanged glances, but no one spoke. The tension in the air was thick, like a storm about to break. Zara felt as though she were standing on the edge of something huge, something that could change everything for her people. The galaxy had cast them out, but now the humans were standing by them, willing to fight for them. The council leader finally spoke again, his voice tinged with frustration. "We will not forget this, Captain. You've made your choice, and we will make ours." With that, the council members turned and boarded their ships without another word. The fleet rose into the sky and disappeared into the stars, leaving a lingering sense of unease in their wake. Zara stood still, watching them go. She couldn't help but feel a mixture of relief and uncertainty. The humans had stood their ground, but what would happen now? The council might have retreated, but they would not forget this. The Veer had made enemies of some of the most powerful forces in the galaxy. Volk turned to Zara, his face softening. "You did well. I know that wasn't easy." Zara nodded, though her mind was still clouded with doubt. "I don't know if they'll leave us alone. They may come back. The council doesn't forgive easily." "They won't," Volk agreed, "but we've made it clear that we won't back down. We're not going to let anyone dictate our future. Not now, not ever." Zara felt a spark of hope flicker within her. For the first time, she truly believed that the humans might be able to protect them. They had shown bravery, not just in defending the Veer, but in standing up to the galaxy's most powerful forces. And that courage meant more to Zara than she could put into words. The next few days were tense, with everyone in the colony on high alert. The humans had fortified the colony's defenses, preparing for any potential retaliation. But despite the uncertainty, life went on. Zara and the other Veer continued to work alongside the humans, each task grounding them further into this new life. The sense of community that had once been foreign to them was beginning to feel like something they could build upon. One evening, as the sun set over the colony, Zara found herself standing outside, looking up at the stars. The sky seemed endless, full of possibilities. The galaxy was vast, and the Council's threat still lingered in the back of her mind. But there was something else now, something she hadn't felt before, a sense of belonging. Captain Volk appeared beside her, his presence calming. "You're thinking about what comes next, aren't you?" Zara nodded. "I don't know what will happen. We've made enemies. The Council won't forget this, and yet I'm not afraid." Volk smiled. "You've come a long way since you first arrived here. The Veer have a future. And it's not just about surviving anymore. It's about choosing what kind of people you want to be." Zara turned to him, her expression thoughtful. "Do you think we can change? Can we really become something different?" "I think you already are," Volk said softly. "You're learning, and that's all anyone can ask for." Zara looked up at the stars again, feeling a new sense of hope rise within her. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she believed that it might be something worth fighting for. And as the humans and the Veer stood together, side by side, Zara realized that maybe, just maybe, they had found something the rest of the galaxy had lost: the ability to hope. The days that followed the Council's visit were filled with a quiet but palpable tension. The colony had grown accustomed to its daily routines, but Zara knew that everything had changed. The threat of the Council had not disappeared. It lingered like a storm on the horizon. She had spent countless nights lying awake, staring at the stars, wondering what would happen when the Council returned, as they surely would. But in those moments, she also found herself reflecting on how far they had come. The humans had stood by them when no one else would, and in doing so, they had become more than just protectors. They had become allies, partners. In some ways, they had become family. Zara had spent much of her time with Captain Volk. She had come to rely on him, not just as a leader, but as someone who understood what it meant to fight for something greater than oneself. There was a calm strength about him, a kind of quiet resolve that Zara found herself drawn to. She had never expected to form such a bond with a human, let alone a human who had no reason to help her people. But as the days turned into weeks, that bond deepened, and Zara began to wonder if there was more to the humans than she had ever imagined. The rest of the Veer were still adjusting to their new life. Some had begun to accept their situation, learning the ways of the humans, while others remained skeptical, unwilling to let go of the past. Zara understood their hesitation. She had once been a proud diplomat for the Veer, a representative of a powerful empire. Now, she was nothing more than a survivor, struggling to find a place in a galaxy that had rejected her people. But as she watched the humans go about their daily lives, working together, helping each other, she began to see the value in what they had built here. It wasn't about power or dominance. It was about unity. And that was something the Veer had forgotten long ago. One afternoon, as Zara worked in the fields alongside some of the human farmers, she caught sight of a familiar face. It was Lyra, her young companion, approaching her with a nervous look on her face. Lyra had become one of the most optimistic members of the Veer, always eager to learn and adapt, but today she seemed different. Her usual bright energy was clouded by worry. "Zara," Lyra said, her voice low, "we've received word. The Council is coming back. They're bringing more ships. They want us gone." Zara's heart sank. She had known this moment was coming, but hearing it spoken aloud made it feel real, and that terrified her. The Council's ships had been a threat before, but now it felt as though the storm they had been waiting for had finally arrived. The humans had given them a chance, but what would happen when the Council arrived with more firepower? "Have you told Captain Volk?" Zara asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Lyra nodded. "He's already preparing for it, but I don't think we can stop them this time. They won't just leave us alone." Zara took a deep breath, trying to push down the fear that threatened to overwhelm her. She had to stay strong for her people, for the humans. If the Council was coming to force them out, she would not back down. The humans had given them a place, a chance to rebuild, and she wasn't going to let that slip away without a fight. "I'll speak to him," Zara said, her voice firm. "We'll figure this out." As she walked toward the center of the colony, she saw Captain Volk standing with several other humans, his face set in a grim expression. The air around him was tense, but as soon as he saw her, he gave her a small, reassuring nod. "We've received confirmation," Volk said as she approached. "The Council is bringing more ships. They'll be here within the next few hours." Zara nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "What can we do? How do we stop them?" Volk looked at her, his gaze steady. "We can't stop them with force, but we don't need to fight them. We need to show them that we won't be intimidated. We won't back down. This colony, our people, we've built something here, and we're not letting anyone take that from us." Zara felt a surge of admiration for the captain. His words were simple, but they were exactly what she needed to hear. She had been so focused on the fear of losing everything that she had forgotten the most important thing. They had built something here. It wasn't just a refuge for the Veer, it was a symbol of what they could achieve when they worked together. The humans had taken them in, and now they had to stand together to protect what they had. "I'll help," Zara said, her voice steady. "We'll stand with you." The humans had already begun preparing for the arrival of the Council. They had fortified the colony's defenses, made sure the ships were ready for any emergency. But as the hours passed, Zara noticed something unexpected. There was no fear among the humans. They were nervous, yes, but they didn't seem afraid. They were calm, resolute, determined. They had been pushed around by the galaxy before, but they weren't going to let anyone push them again. As night fell, the Council's ships arrived. The sky darkened with their presence, casting an ominous shadow over the colony. The humans stood at the ready, but Zara felt a strange, calm settle over her. This was it, the moment they had all been waiting for. She wasn't sure what would happen next, but she knew one thing. They had to show the Council that they would not be intimidated. Captain Volk stood at the front of the group, his stance unwavering as the Council's representatives disembarked. The same Council leader, the one who had threatened them before, stepped forward, his eyes narrowing as he took in the scene before him. "This is your last chance, Captain," the leader said coldly. "You are harboring criminals. If you don't turn them over, we will have no choice but to remove you from this planet." Volk didn't flinch. He stepped forward, his voice steady. "We've made our choice. The Veer are here to stay. If you want to fight us for it, then we'll do what we must." "But we're not going anywhere." The Council leader's face twisted with frustration, but he said nothing. Instead, he turned to his ships, gesturing for his crew to prepare. The tension was thick, the air crackling with the weight of what was about to happen. But then something unexpected happened. One of the Council members, a woman with dark hair and kind eyes, stepped forward. She looked at the leader, her expression firm. "This isn't right," she said. "They've done nothing to deserve this. Let them be. Let them live." The Council leader glared at her, but the woman didn't back down. She stood tall, her eyes locking with his. After a long moment, the leader finally gave a sharp nod, and the tension seemed to lift slightly. "You've made your decision," the leader said, his voice cold. "But the galaxy won't forget this." And with that, the Council members turned and boarded their ships, leaving the colony in silence. Zara stood there, still processing what had just happened. The humans had stood firm, but so had she, and the Council had backed down. For the first time in weeks, she felt a sense of relief, a feeling of victory. Volk turned to her, his expression softening. "We did it," he said, his voice filled with quiet pride. Zara smiled, though the weight of everything still lingered. "We did." "But this isn't over, is it?" Volk shook his head. "No, but we've proven something today. We've shown the galaxy that we won't be bullied, and that's a victory." Zara looked around at the humans, the Veer, and the colony they had built together. For the first time, she felt that maybe, just maybe, they had found a place for themselves in this galaxy. It wouldn't be easy, and there would be more challenges ahead, but they had proven they were stronger together. As the stars twinkled above them, Zara felt a new sense of hope. The road ahead would be long, but for the first time in a long time, she believed in the possibility of a future, one where the Veer could live, rebuild, and become something better. And maybe, just maybe, the galaxy could learn something from the humans who had shown them the way.